Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. Welcome to this session of Textual Study of the Quran. We are sorry for some glitches and we are starting about a couple of minutes late. So, we had studied verses 149 to 168 of Surah Al Imran in our previous session, and today we will be completing their literal and idiomatic translation. So, starting off, Ya ayyuhal lazina amanu in tuti'ul lazina kaffaru yaruddukum ala a'qabikum fatanqalibu khasirin. So, Ya ayyuhal lazina amanu means, O you who believe. In is if. Tuti'u, you obey. Al-lazina, those who. Kafaru, disbelieved. Yaruddukum, they will turn you. Ala, upon. Aqabikum, your heels. So, aqab is the plural of aqab. And aqab means your heel. So, kum is your, of course, in the plural. So, the idiomatic translation would be that, oh believers, if you follow those who have disbelieved, they will turn you around your heels, which means that they will revert you back to disbelief. And then fatanqalibu khasirin, fa, therefore tanqalibu, you will end up khasirin, in loss. So, though, oh who you believe, if you follow those who have disbelieved, they will turn you on your heels, they will turn you back, and so you will end up as losers. Balillahu maulakum. Bal, in fact, or why not, you can say. Allah, God, maulakum, your guardian. So, maula is guardian, kum is yours. So, balillahu maulakum. You, God is in fact your guardian. Wa, and huwa, he, khair, best. Nasirin, the helpers. So, and he is the best of helpers. God is your guardian and he is the best of helpers. Sanulqi. So, sanulqi means the word sa, the way it occurs here, it actually refers to something that's going to happen in the near future. So, therefore, it's translated as soon. Sanulqi would mean soon we will implant. Fi, in. Kulub, hearts. So kulub is the plural of qalb, and qalb means a heart. So sanulqi fi kulub will mean soon we will implant in the hearts. Al-lazina, those who. Kafaru, disbelieved. Ar-rob, rob means awe. So soon we will plant awe in the hearts of those who have disbelieved. This is how idiomatically we'll translate it. Bima means because. Ashraku billah, they associated partners with God. Ashraku billah. Ma lam, ma is that, lam is not. Yunazzil bihi, revealed in their favor. Sultana, any sanction. So, sanulqi fi qulubil lazin, soon we shall implant in the hearts of those who have disbelieved awe. So, we will implant awe in the hearts of those who have disbelieved because they have associated partners with God about which he did not reveal any sanction, about which he did not reveal any argument. So the word sultan in Arabic is used in this form. It means sanction, it means an argument, it means something that is of the nature of a reason. Wa ma'wahum an-nar, wa, and ma'wa means the place, whom theirs, ma'wa means the ultimate place, an-nar, the fire. So ma'wahum an-nar would mean, and their ultimate place will be the fire. Wa bi'sa, and what an evil, maswa, resting place, az-zalimin, for those who are unjust to their souls. So the word zalama or zalim, the way it is used in the Quran, this is something that we often come across, and you may also note this down, that in the Quran the word is used in the meaning of zalimun li nafsihi, that someone who is unjust to his own soul, and this is often used when a person indulges in polytheism because he denies the right of his soul. The soul, the uncontaminated soul, the pure soul, always is something that cherishes monotheism. But when you deny this right of monotheism to the soul, you are being unjust to the soul. So that is why the Quran often uses this term to mean that you are an oppressor. You are unjust to your own soul because your own soul yearns for monotheism, but you don't follow it. So bi'sa maswa zalimin, and what a bad abode and what a bad resting place it is for those who are zalim, for those who are unjust to their souls. وَلَقَدْ صَدَقَكُمُ اللَّهُ وَعْدَهُ إِسْتَحُسُّونَهُم بِإِذْنِهِ. So remember, this is a place in Surah Al-Imran in which the aftermath of the Battle of Uhud, the impact it had on a lot of weak Muslims and whose faith was bordering on hypocrisy because they were being influenced by the propaganda of the people of the book. Then they would say that how come these are followers of a prophet and they have lost in a battle? They should not have lost in a battle. And again, this is something that happened because of the misplanning of a group of people. They were told not to leave their positions in this battle, but they, out of their own greed for the spoils of war, they left their place prematurely, and this resulted in a defeat for the Muslims. So the Almighty has said that His law is the same for all. If you don't obey the Prophet, then you're going to suffer the reversal. You're going to suffer the defeat. But of course, this was taken to advantage by the people of the book who had a wonderful excuse to mislead the masses by saying that prophets of God, they never lose a battle. So how come this in this particular instance they have lost a battle? So this is a whole comment that is being made that the reason that Muslims lost that battle was because they disobeyed their messenger, and at the same time there were weak Muslims who were found amongst them, and their weakness was to be exposed so that they can either overcome this weakness or they succumb to it. So وَلَقَدْ صَدَقَكُمُ اللَّهُ وَعْدَهُ إِسْتَحُسُّونَهُم بِإِذْنِهِ wa, and laqad, indeed. Sadaqakum means it became truthful. Kum, your. Sadaqakumullah means God's promise became truthful to you. And wa'dahu, of course, is His promise. So, walaqad sadaqakumullahu wa'dahu would mean that indeed when God fulfilled His promise. And is tahussunahum bi'iznihi. When tahussunahum would mean that you were really routing them, putting them to the sword. Bi'iznihi, with His directive, with God's directive. So remember in the Battle of Uhud, initially the Almighty had promised them victory if they behave themselves and follow His directives. So initially we know that in this battle Muslims were winning and they had really routed the disbelievers, and that is precisely what is being stated here, that God fulfilled His promise in the initial part of the battle. لَقَدْ صَدَّقَكُمُ اللَّهُ وَعْدَهُ إِذْ بِإِذْنِهِ, when you were routing them. Istahussu, hassa yuhussu means that you were really putting them to the sword and killing them. بِإِذْنِهِ, with God's leave, with God's permission, with God's directive. This is the initial part of the battle. But then something ensued, and that is hatta iza fashiltum. Hatta, until. Fashiltum. Fashiltum means, or iza means when. Fashiltum means when you showed weakness. Wa, and. Tanaza'tum fil amr. You differed amongst yourselves. Tanaza'tum fil amr. You differed in matters of the battle. Wa, and. Asaitum. Asaitum means you disobeyed. Mim ba'di ma arakum. After that, mimbadima, after ma arakum mean after He showed you, and after God showed you, ma tuhibbun, what you had desired. So you had seen victory by your eyes because you were winning, and but because of the fact that fashiltum, the first thing is mentioned as fashiltum, that you showed weakness, and then watanaza'tum fil amr. This is the second thing, that you started to differ between yourselves. Of course, this relates to the fact that a group of swordsmen who were stationed at a particular post, they were told not to move from there, but they differed amongst themselves. Very few of them, they remained in that post, and many of them deserted that post. So the second thing is mentioned is وَتَنَازَعْتُمْ fil amr. You differed amongst yourselves regarding amr, regarding the battle. وَعَصَيْتُمْ, and you disobeyed, although the word disobeyed is used, and the person whom they disobeyed is not mentioned, but it is obvious that they disobeyed the Prophet. And then it is said, Mim ba'di ma arakum, mim ba'd, after, ma, when, arakum, God showed you, ma, what, ma, that, tuhibbun, you liked. So this happened that after God showed you what you like, of course, referring to the victory which they were actually achieving in the initial part of the battle. And then it is said, Minkum man yuridu dunya, minkum, among you, man, those who, yuridu, intend, ad-dunya, this world. So among you are those who intend this world, which means that there are those among you who just have and who just think that whatever they can gain from this world is sufficient. They don't have any worry of the hereafter. Wa minkum man yuridul akhirah. Wa, and minkum, among you, man, those who yuridu, intend, al akhirah, the hereafter. So it's like a comparison that there were some among you who intended this world, which means that all that they had was to gain the benefits of this world. And minkum man yuridul akhirah, and there were those among you who wanted the benefits of the hereafter. Summa sarafakum anhum liyabtaliyakum. Summa, then, sarafakum. So sarafakum means God turned you away anhum, from them, liyabtaliyakum, so that He can test you. ثم صرفكم عنهم ليبتليكم ولقد عفا عنكم, and laqad, indeed, afa ankum, afa an is actually one word which means God forgave you. Kum, or forgive, of course, is like saying afa an, and kum is you. So walaqad afa ankum would mean, and God forgave you. Wallahu zu fadlin alal mu'mineen, wa, and Allah, God, zu fadlin, very, very gracious, ala, on, al mu'mineen, the believers. So summa sarafakum anhum would mean that God turned you away from them to test you. And walaqad afa ankum, and He is someone who forgave you. Walaqad afa ankum, even after your blunder of leaving that place, God forgave you. Wallahu zu fadlin alal mu'mineen, and God is very gracious upon the believers. Allah is on or upon. Al mu'mineen, the believers. إذ تصعدون ولا تلوون على أحد والرسول يدعوكم في أخراكم. Is when tus'iduna. So tus'iduna means that you were running away. Wa, and la, not. Talvuna. So talvuna means to not look behind, to not look back. So that is added, and that is incorporated by the negative particle la. Otherwise, it means to look back. So wala talvun would mean that you did not look back. Ala ahadin, any of you. You did not even. You were running away, and you were not even looking back at anyone behind you. Wa, and ar-Rasul, the messenger, of course, referring to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Yad'ukum, he was calling you. He was calling you. Yad'u, call, kum, you. Fi, in, ukhrakum, from behind you. So remember, when you were running, you were fleeing, and you were not even turning back on anyone, not looking back towards anyone. And the fact is, وَالرَّسُولُ يَدْعُوكُمْ, the messenger was calling you, of course, calling you to come back. فِي أُخْرَاكُمْ, from behind you. So he was stationed behind you and he was calling you to come back. But فَأَصَابَكُمْ, then فَأَصَابَكُمْ would mean that God inflicted upon you. God inflicted upon you. غَمًّا, so غَمًّا means a sorrow. بِغَمٍّ, which came with another sorrow. So God inflicted you with a sorrow which came with another sorrow. It's like saying that you were doubly inflicted by sorrow. The first sorrow, of course, being the sorrow of defeat that you were facing, and the other sorrow, which we know from this construction, is that it must relate to the person of the Prophet because of the word fa. And this is corroborated by history, because we know that during this battle and during this time when Muslims were fleeing and they had left their post, there was this famous rumor which actually spread through them that the Prophet had been martyred. And this, of course, was something so gigantic and so huge in nature that Muslims were really shaken to the core. So the Quran says, لِكَيْ لَا تَحْزَنُوا عَلَى مَا فَاتَكُمْ. So God inflicted you with one sorrow after another sorrow. لِكَيْ لَا, so that not. لِكَيْ is so that, la is not. تَحْزَنُوا, you grieve, so that you do not grieve. Ala, on. Ma fatakum, what has left you. wa and, la not, ma asabakum what has befallen you, what has reached you. So the implied meaning is that when you left your posts and the messenger was calling you from behind, but you did not listen to him, of course, and he, as a result, I mean, God, as a result, inflicted one sorrow after the other so that you do not grieve on what you lose and walama asabakum and what comes upon you, which of course refers to the fact that this trial through which they are being made to pass, you should understand that if something has to happen, it is going to happen, and you must not grieve on that happening because this is God's destiny for you, and that destiny, of course, is something that you have called for yourselves by being so cowards, such cowards. Wala ma asabakum. Wallahu khabirum bima ta'malun. Wa and Allah, God, khabir, knows. Bima what? Ta'malun, you do. Wallahu khabirun bima ta'malun, and God knows what you do. So, of course, this is something which, once again, people are reminded that when you did not follow the decorum of the war, the protocols of the war, you were inflicted with this loss, and this loss was something that was destined to you, and it came to you because God. You should not worry about what has left you or what has reached you, because if you do so, then you will not be accepting the destiny from God or the fate that is ordained for you. When something goes amiss like this, then you have to search for the causes and not grieve instead, or not be inflicted with grief. And Wallahu khabirun bima ta'malun, and God very well knows what you do. Okay, so if you have any questions about what we have studied up till now, I will take those questions and we will then proceed from here.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saleem. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Right now, Dr. Saleem, I do not see any raised hands. But just some house rules before we go on. Please, everybody, when you ask your questions, make sure that you stick to the text that we are studying right now. There may be space for general questions in the end, and ask one question at a time so everybody can get a chance. Dr. Saleem, I do not see any raised hands, so if you want to continue.
Right. So we move on to the next verses. ثم أنزل عليكم من بعد الغم أمنة نعاسا يغشى طائفة منكم. ثم, after that, or then, أنزل, God sent upon, عليكم, you, God sent upon you, من بعد الغم, من بعد, after, al-gham, the sorrow, amana, amana means peace, nu'as, and of course this is like a substitute for the word peace, meaning sleep. So after that, God sent down upon you, I mean, after the sorrow that was inflicted upon you, God sent down peace in the form of sleep. Yaksha ta'ifatam minkum. Yaksha means something that enveloped. Ta'ifa means a group. Minkum, from among you. So after this defeat, God sent down peace in the form of sleep, which enveloped or engulfed a group from among you. Wa ta'ifa, and another group, qad, indeed, ahammathum, they started to engage in thoughts, anfusuhum, they themselves. Yazunnuna means they actually engaged in these thoughts. Or وَقَدْ أَهَمَّتْهُمْ أَنفُسُهُمْ يَظُنُّونَ would mean that they themselves started to engage in these thoughts billah, regarding God. And what were the thoughts? غَيْرَ الْحَقِّ, which were against the truth, and ظَنَّ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ, and they were of the nature of the thoughts that often one would think in the times of Jahiliyyah. One thing that I would like to clear from our minds here is that often we translate the word Jahiliyyah as Jahala, or the age of ignorance. This is a very incorrect translation. So there is a difference between Jahala and Jahiliyyah. And if you look at the English translation of the Quran, often wherever the word Jahiliyyah comes in the Quran, it is translated as the age of ignorance, of course implying to the age right before the Prophet. So Jahala and Jahiliyyah are very different words. The word Jahala can be translated as ignorance, but not Jahiliyyah. So Jahiliyyah is a term used for the pre-Islamic or the pre-prophetic times, the times before Prophet Muhammad. And it signifies the fact that people would decide the truth of something, not because something is truth per se, but because it was in line with their own interests. This is what classical Jahiliyyah is, that you are more concerned with your interest and you're not concerned with what right and wrong is, but your concern is something which suits you. And for that, you will go to any extent. So, this is what the term Jahiliyyah actually means. So, when it is used here, do remember that any translation that you might come across which says the age of ignorance, this is not true. It is basically an age in which people decided right and wrong not on the basis of their conscience or what right and wrong actually are, but on the basis of their own convenience. And they thought that, well, if something suits me, it is good for me and it is right for me. So that is what the age of Jahiliyyah was all about. So these people, so the Quran actually said that one group of people were overcome with sleep, and this descended in the form of sleep. That the peace that was given to them descended in the form of sleep, and another group, they indulged in these wild thoughts of the nature of those thoughts which often people would indulge in the age of Jahiliyyah, and they were against the truth, غير الحق. And what these thoughts? They are stated right after that, and that is يقولون. They would say, هل لنا من الأمر من شيء? هل, do, lana, for us, min al amre, about the matter, min shay, any authority, which means that do we have any say in these matters? Do we have any, do we have any control of these matters? Qul innal amra kullahu lillah. Qul, now the Prophet is being told to answer them. Qul is tell them, O Prophet. And what should we tell them? Innal amra kullahu lillah. Inna, indeed, al amr, the matter, kullahu, all of it, lillah is for God. So the matter is all for God. Remember, these were the people who were actually advising the Prophet to fight the war, to fight the battle of Uhud, while staying and stationed in Medina. They did not want themselves to go out. So they were actually saying this, that, well, we did not have any say in this battle, and had the Prophet listened to us, maybe this would not have happened. So, يَقُولُونَ هَلْ لَنَا مِنَ الْأَمْرِ مِنْ شَيْءٍ. Do we have, they would say that, do we have any say in this matter? So they are stopped forthwith in the form of a parenthetical sentence, and the Prophet is told that you must answer them, Innal amra kullahu lillah, that all authority and all this control belongs to God. Yukhfuna fi anfusihim ma la yubduna lak. Yukhfuna, they hide, fi, in, anfusihim, in their souls, in themselves, ma, that, la, not, yubduna is evident, lak, to you. So they hide in themselves what is not evident to you, which means, of course, that they were having this thought that had these people obeyed us and did not go out of the city to fight the war, this would not have happened. So, يَقُولُونَ لَوْ كَانَ لَنَا مِنَ الْأَمْرِ شَيْءٌ مَا قُتِلْنَا هَاهُنَا. Now you see, their inner self has become absolutely apparent. يَقُولُونَ, they say, لَوْ, if, كَانَ لَنَا مِنَ الْأَمْرِ, if we had any say, if we had any authority, lana min al-amr, if we had any authority, and shayun is of course any, ma qutilna, ma is not, qutilna, we would have been killed, hahuna, right here. So of course they are referring to their compatriots who were killed. He said that had they listened to us, had we any say in this matter, ma qutilna hahuna, we would not have been killed here. Kul, now once again the Almighty is asking the Prophet to answer them. So you see, this is a beautiful place in the Quran in which you can see how the dialogue, which is of course what the Quran is very specific and special about, it's like a conversation that goes on between various groups that are present right there, and it's like a back and forth thing. And many a time you find that the disbelievers are saying something, and before any comment is to be made or something is to be answered, the Prophet is told to answer that particular thing that has been said on the spot, so that the discourse is stopped there for some time, an answer is given, and then it proceeds forward. So this has occurred twice here. You can see kul innal amra kullahu lillah, it was here. So the Prophet was told that you immediately answer them when they said that, do we have any say? So he was asked to tell them, innal amra kullahu lillah, all the matter belongs to God. Now once again when they said, law kana lana min al-amri shay, had we any say in this matter, we would not have been killed here. So once again the Prophet is told to answer them, and that is, law kuntum fi buyutikum, law, if, kuntum, you were, fi, in Buyutikum, your houses. So buyut is the plural of bait, and bait means house. So buyut is houses. So tell them, O Prophet, had you been in your houses, had you been in your houses, لَبَرَزَ الَّذِينَ كُتِبَ عَلَيْهِمُ الْقَتْلُ إِلَى مَضَاجِعِهِمْ. لَبَرَزَ, indeed appeared. الَّذِينَ, those who. كُتِبَ عَلَيْهِمْ, ordained for them. كُتِبَ عَلَيْهِمْ, ordained for them. Al-qatl, death or killing. Ila, towards. Mazajihim, their places of death. So mazajir basically is the plural of mazja, and mazja is a place. And of course, the context here shows the place where a person is to be killed. So what is being said here is that it is not that you were killed because of the planning of the Prophet and he decided that you should go out of the city to fight the enemy. It's not like that. I mean, when death is destined, when God says that had you been in your houses and death had been destined for you, you would have gone there in any case, because death was written for you in that situation, in this form, and you would have gone there and presented yourselves for this purpose. So what is being said here is that it is not any misplanning from God's prophet that has resulted in this. Basically, it was the destiny that you had to face because of your own cowardice and because of your own weakness. And then it says, وَلِيَبْتَلِيَ اللَّهُ مَا فِي صُدُورِكُمْ wa, and liyabtaliya means to liyabtaliya means to try Allah, God, and so that God can try ma fi sudurikum, ma, that, fi, in, sudurikum, your hearts. So the word yabtaliya actually, just as it means to try, it also means to test and to be put to test. So that God tests what is in your hearts. Wa, and liyumahisa. So yumahisa means to clean something, to purify something. Ma, that, fi, in, kulubikum, your hearts. Kulub, once again, is the plural of qalb. Sudur is the plural of sadr. Sadr means chest, its plural is sudur. Qalb means heart, its plural is kulub. So God says that so that God tests what is in your hearts, and he cleanses what is in, so that God cleanses, tests what is in your chests, and he cleanses what is in your hearts. Wallahu alimun bizati sudur, wa, and Allah, God, alimun, has knowledge. Bizat, bizat is sudur actually means what is in the hearts. So God has knowledge of what is in the hearts, or what is in the chest, it can be said. So, of course, what is in the chest refers to the hearts. So, in other words, what is being said here is that this whole uh, thing happened, this incident happened because God wanted to test and try you. And the ibtala here actually refers to the fact that what we call in Arabic as tathir, to separate the right from wrong. So we know that this battle of Uhud was one such battle in which the hypocrites and those weak of faith, they became very distinct from the true believers because they absolutely came to the fore. So that is what is being pointed out here. وَلْيَبْتَلِيَ اللَّهُ مَا فِي صُدُورِكُمْ. So this happened because God wanted to make you separate and isolate you, and because he wanted to test you what is concealed in your heart. So basically, this is something that has to be understood, that these happenings and these incidents, when they occur in this form, Muslims suffer defeat or any reversal, then it is because of their own doing. And at the same time, the law of God is same for everyone. He does not change his law. But we also know from the Quran that this is also a period in which Muslims were given a chance and a respite to respond to their weaknesses and to once again earn God's blessings if they are able to confess their weaknesses and then, of course, reform themselves. إن الذين تولوا منكم يوم التقى الجمعان إنما استزلهم الشيطان ببعض ما كسبوا. Inna, indeed, allazina, those who, tawallau, turn back, minkum, from among you, yawma, the day, iltaqal jama'an. Iltaqa means to meet face to face. Jama'an. So, jama'an means the two groups. Jama'an is one group. Jama'an would mean two groups, of course, referring to the two opposite parties of the battle. So, inna allazina tawallau minkum yawmal taqal jama'an would mean, indeed, those who turned their backs on the day the two groups met. Innama istazallahum shaitan. Innama, indeed. Istazallahum shaitan. God, Satan made them slip. Satan made them slip. Biba'di ma kasabu. Because of something that they did. Bibaz, because because of something. Ma kasabu, actually, literally, it means what they earned. And this is a very common way in the Quran to express the fact that the misdeeds that they committed. So if they turn their back, then it was because some of the misdeeds they had committed, Satan induced them to cowardice. In the mastazallahu shaitanu bima'dima kasabu, he induced them, he led them, he made them lose their ground. Istazalla means that he made them lose their ground, he induced them to cowardice. Biba'dima kasabu, because of their misdeeds. وَلَقَدْ عَفَى اللَّهُ عَنْهُمْ wa, and laqad, indeed, afa, forgive. Allah, God, anhum, them. But still God forgive them. Yani in spite of all these blemishes, God continued to forgive them. وَلَقَدْ عَفَى اللَّهُ عَنْهُمْ, and God forgave them. Inna Allah ghafurur rahim. Inna, indeed, Allah is God. Ghafur is forgiving, and Halim is gracious and forbearing. So Inna Allah ghafurun halim. Indeed, God is forgiving and is forbearing. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تكونوا كالذين كفروا وقالوا لإخوانهم إذا ضربوا في الأرض أو كانوا غزا لو كانوا عندنا ما ماتوا وما قتلوا ليجعل الله ذلك حسرة في قلوبهم والله يحيي ويميت والله بما تعملون بصير. The same context is continuing here, and the same comment is also continuing in the same vein, that believers were being told repeatedly, and they were bombarded with these doubts so that they could be led away from their prophet. And they are being told that if they had listened to these hypocrites and to these people weak of faith, they would not have suffered the way they did suffer. So this is in the background of what is being said, that Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, O you who believe, la takunu, do not become, kallazina, like those. Ka is like, allazina, those. O believers, do not become like those kafaru, who disbelieved. Do not become like those who disbelieved. Waqalu, and they said, li ikhwanihim, to their brothers. So ikhwan means brothers. Him, their brothers, who said to their brothers, iza, when. Zarabu fil ard. So zarabu fil ard is an idiom of the Arabic language, means to walk on the earth. It can also mean, in the context that when you go for a journey, when you travel. So it says, iza zarabu fil ard. When they said to their brothers. And what did they say? At the time that they were going out for traveling, au kanu ghuzzan. Au means or. Kanu ghuzzan. Kanu ghuzzan would mean when they had gone for a battle. Ghuzza, gone for a battle. Kanu, they had gone for a battle. Lau kanu, lau, if. Kanu, they, indana, were with us. If they were with us, ma matu, ma not. Matu, died. Wa, and. Ma, not. Kotilu, slain. So they said that had they been with us, they would not have died or had been slain. Again, the same thing that has been said earlier on. Now, this is what the believers are being told, that do not become like these disbelievers who say to their brothers, that who when they go out for traveling or on a journey or they go out for battle, that had they been with us, they would not have been died or they would not have been slain. Now, لِيَجْعَلَ اللَّهُ ذَلِكَ حَسْرَةً فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ, so that God makes this a hasra, so that God makes it a longing. Yaj'ala means to make. Allah is God. Zalika is this thought. Hasra is a longing. Fi, in. Qulubihim, their hearts. So the result is that God will cause them to regret their words. It will become a hasrat. It will become a longing in their hearts. Wa, and. Allah, God. Yuhyi, gives life. Wa, and. Yumeet, gives death. And God gives life and God gives death. So what is being said here is that life and death is not in your control. This is not true that if Muslims had stayed back, they would have not suffered, they would not have been killed, they would not have been slain like this. What is being said here is that life and death, Wallahu yuhyi wa yumeet, it is God who gives life, wa yumeet, and it is God who gives death. It's not in your control. It's not that if you were placed strategically in a different position or a different place, you would have won the day. That is not the case. It is God who destines life and death. Wallahu bima ta'maluna basir. Wa, and. Allah, God, bima, that which. Ta'maluna, you do. Basir, sees. So what you do, God sees. God observes. Wallahu bima ta'maluna basir would mean that whatever you do, God observes that. Wa and la in. So if qutiltum, you are slain, fi in sabilillah, the cause of God, in the way of God. So if you are slain or if you are killed in the cause of God, or muttum, you die. La maghfiratun, indeed the maghfirah, indeed the forgiveness, minallah, from God, wa and rahma, mercy, khairun, better, mimma, what they, yajmaun, are gathering. So what is being said here is that if you are killed in his cause or you die in his cause, the maghfirah, the forgiveness that you earn from him, and the rahmah that you earn from him, which is mercy, is better than what you are gathering, is better than what you are amassing. وَلَئِن مُتُّمْ أَوْ قُتِلْتُمْ لَإِلَى اللَّهِ تُحْشَرُونَ. Wa and la'in, if muttum, you die, aw or qutiltum, you are killed, la, indeed, ilallah, towards God, tuhsharun, you shall be gathered. So whether you die or whether you are killed, the result is the same, that you are going to be gathered towards God. You're not going to go towards your own deities. It's not that your deities are going to come and intercede for you. You are going to be in the presence of God. Pabima rahmatim mina. This is one of the most astonishing places of the Quran, one of the most impactful places, and it shows the character of the Prophet. One thing that you might note here is that you see the person of the Prophet is discussed at a number of occasions in the Quran, and these occasions, of course, relate to battles like the Battle of Badr, Uhud, Tabuk, Hunain. All of these are discussed in the Quran. The way he dealt with his companions, the way he concluded the truce of Hudaybiyah. So all these verses, I would say, they present a very, very, uh, I would say, conceptually true picture of the Prophet. And many a time, this is not given so much importance, and we find the personality of the Prophet in his biography when it is written outside of the Quran. I mean, it hinges on so many weak stories and folklore and things that are not authentic. That it gives us really, at least I feel very painful to see that how the person of the Prophet, the way, the grand way, and the magnificent and majestic way he's described, his persona is described in the Quran, is, I mean, not paid much heed to, and we look at a lot of other weak narratives. But if you look through the Quran, you'll find the best biography of the Prophet. It is interspersed in the Quran, and there have been efforts by various scholars to construct the biography of the Prophet from the Quran. So his bravery, his affection, his dealings towards his companions, all of them, they are spread here and there in the Quran, and it would have been much beneficial for not only ourselves but for our younger generations to bring out his personality in this fashion and the form of what the Quran has said. So this is one area that you might find very interesting. It says, فَبِمَا رَحْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ لِنْتَ لَهُمْ. Therefore, bima, because, rahma, mercy, minallah, from God, linta lahum, you are lenient to them, you are gentle to them. So fabima rahmatin minallah means because of God's mercy, you are lenient to them. Because of God's favor, because of God's gift on you, you are very lenient, you are very gentle and polite to them. Va and law, if kunta, you were fazzan. So fazzan means to be bad tempered. Ghaliz al qalb. Ghaliz al qalb means someone who is hard hearted. Lan faddu. Indeed, they would have run away. Min hawlik, from around you. So it is said that it is God's great graciousness that you are a person who is very polite, who is very gentle to them. Had you been someone who was very bad tempered and very hard hearted, law kunta fazzan, had you been someone who is very ill tempered or bad tempered and hard hearted, lan faddu min hawlika. These people who are your sahaba, who are your companions, they would have just run away from around you. So therefore, fa'fu anhum, wastaghfir lahum, washawirhum fil amr. Fa'fu anhum, so therefore forgive them. وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لَهُمْ, ask for forgiveness for them. وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ, and keep consulting them in the matters of the state. Shawirhum, consulting them. Fil Amr, in the matters of the state. So you see, once again, after the Battle of Uhud, this was a very high chance that the Prophet, in spite of being his true self, in which he was very gentle, he could have really ticked off the Muslims who had left their place, and the whole matter resulted in defeat for Muslims. But on top of that, the Almighty says that even now amongst them there are people who might mend their ways. Even now among there are people who might, if you give them respite, if you give them more time, they might come to the truth and they become true believers. So farfu anhum, forgive them. This forgiveness is something you're already prone to. I mean, it's like the Almighty is saying that you are already a polite person, you are so gentle. But after this defeat of Uhud, when you might be a little put off because of their behavior, in spite of that, forgive them. Farfu anhum. And not only that, fastaghfir lahum. Ask for their forgiveness. Ask for God's forgiveness for them. And washawirhum fil amr. And don't isolate yourselves from them. Don't ignore them. You still consult them in the affairs of state. And then فَإِذَا عَزَمْتَ فَتَوَكَّلَ عَلَى اللَّهِ. Therefore, iza, when azamta, you are determined and you come to a conclusion. Fatawakkal. So fa, therefore, tawakkal, trust. Allah, upon God. So faiza azamta fatawakkal Allah. But when you reach a decision, then you put your trust in God, which means that you keep consulting these elements, you keep asking for their advice, that is fine, but you are not bound by their advice. It is not that if they give you some advice, then you have to follow what they have said. So don't think that if they start dictating you, then this is something that you should accept. Their dictation is not acceptable to you. You should consult them. You should, of course, be advised from them. But then what you best think is something that you must follow. فَإِذَا عَزَمْتَ فَتَوَكَّلَ اللَّهِ. Whenever you reach a decision, you do what you would like, and you place your trust in God. فَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. Why? Inna Allah yuhibbul mutawakkilin. Inna is indeed, Allah is God. Yuhibbu is hold dear. Mutawakkilin, those who trust. Indeed, God holds dear those who trust. If yansurukum Allah, if God helps you, yansuru helps, kum you, Allah God. If God helps you, fala ghaliba lakum, no one can prevail upon you. Fa, therefore, la, not, ghalib, prevail, lakum, to you. So if God helps you, none can prevail upon you. Wa, and if yakhzulkum, if God abandons you, fa, therefore, man, who, zallazi is, yansurukum, going to help you, mim ba'dihi, after this. So if God is with you, no one can prevail upon you. But if God leaves you, then who is it who is going to help you? So therefore, وَعَلَى اللَّهِ فَلْيَتَوَكَّلِ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Wa, and Allah, upon Allah God, فَلْيَتَوَكَّل, should trust, al-mu'minun, the believers. So upon God should the believers trust. وَمَا كَانَ لِنَبِيٍّ أَن يَغُلَّ وَمَنْ يَغْلُلْ يَأْتِ بِمَا غَلَّ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ ثُمَّ تُوَفَّى كُلُّ نَفْسٍ مَا كَسَبَتْ وَهُمْ لَا يُظْلَمُونَ. The same topic is still continuing, and you see the propaganda that they were also stirring in the minds of the Muslims, and weak Muslims in particular, was that they would say that their own prophet was someone who was not their well-wisher, because had he stayed back in Medina and fought the war, the Battle of Uhud, from Medina, there would have been very few casualties and Muslims might have won the day. But they stirred this propaganda that look at the misplanning on the part of the Prophet, that he went out of the city and this caused so much killings amongst the Muslims. So therefore, such a prophet cannot be your well-wisher. So this is the background. So upon this, the Quran is now commenting. So remember, the Quran is like a code, is like a living relationship which the Prophet had with God, and it resulted in revelations which were a response to a situation, which were a response to a number of comments which were not actually cited directly in the Quran, but you can read in between the lines. If you read these verses, وَمَا كَانَ لِنَبِيٍّ أَن يَغُلَّ, it means that it is not the stature of the Prophet to be someone who is a ill wisher of people. Now, of course, that ill wish is not sounded or not sort of presented in words, but we very well know from the context that that these hypocrites were trying to raise this propaganda that their own prophet was not their own well-wisher because he was responsible for this bloodshed. So now the Quran is commenting on this which is in the air. I mean, these feelings were in the air. So remember, when you understand the Quran, and we've discussed this a number of times, that's basically a conversation, it's a dialogue between real entities of 7th century Arabia. What is being transpired in the atmosphere is discussed. What is discussed is also something which is in between the lines and also at times very apparent. So if you keep all these aspects in mind, you will be really able to appreciate. Now, this is a comment, as I said, of the Quran on something that was in the atmosphere. So that thing can be gauged from the context. And that thing was that these people were trying to stir this propaganda that their prophet was an ill wisher. He was not your well wisher because he took you out of the city. So now the Quran is commenting on that without citing them. It's commenting. It says, وَمَا كَانَ لِنَبِيٍّ أَن يَغُلَّ, which means that it is not befitting for a prophet to be someone's ill wisher or someone who is not a well wisher. وَمَن يَغْلُلْ wa, and man, he who yaghlul is an ill wisher, ya'ti bima ghalla, he comes forth with what he has ill wished, yawm al-qiyamah, on the day of judgment. So what is being said is that no prophet of God is of this sort, that he would be an ill wisher, he would not wish well for his people, and anyone who does that, he's going to come on the day of judgment, and that ill wish that he harbored in his heart is going to be exposed on that day. وَمَن يَغْلُلْ يَأْتِ بِمَا غَلَّ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ, and he who does that ill wishing, he is going to come on the day of judgment with that ill wish, which means that is going to be exposed. It will be brought before people. Summa, then, tuwaffa kullu. Tuwaffa means given in full. Kullu nafsin, every soul. Ma, that. Kasabat, it earned. So every soul will be given in full what it earned, which means that on the day of judgment, everyone will be recompensed in full whatever it earned. Kasabat, earned. Wa, and whom, they, la, not, yuzlamun, be in any way shown injustice. So they will not be shown any injustice. If manittaba, he who, ittaba means he who follows or he would like, Rizwan Allah. So Rizwan means the pleasure. Allah is God. So he who would like to please God, of a manittaba Rizwan Allah. So therefore he who would like to ittaba Rizwan Allah, who would like to please God, who would like to make God happy. Ka, equal, man, he, ba'a, return, be, with, sakhat. Sakhat means anger, minallah, from God, wa, and ma'wahu, his abode, his fate, jahannam, his hell. So what is being said is a comparison. So he who follows the will of God, or he who seeks to make God happy, can he be the same? Can he be the same? Kaman, who returns with God's anger. The two cannot be the same. Of course, that is what is being implied here. That there is one group who would like to please God, and there is another group who has returned with the wrath of God. Wa ma'wahu jahannam. Their fate is hell. Wa, and bi'sa, evil. Al-masir, a resting place. And what an evil resting place is that, which of course is referring to hell. Jahannam, hell. Whom, they, darajat, lots of ranks and lots of, high status in the law before God. Hum darajatun in the law, and they will have different status. There will lots of status with God. Wa, and Allah, God. Basir, observes. Bimat ya'malun, what they are doing, and God observes what they are doing. And without having any recourse to the linguistics of the Arabic language, just to keep something that might help you in translating the Quran, whenever you see ya'lamun, it means they know, and whenever you see ta'lamun, it means you know. So ya and ta is just like a change in inflection. So wallahu basirun bima ya'malun would mean that God knows what they are doing. But if it had been ta'malun, it would mean God knows what you are doing. So it's like the second and the third person that is being mentioned here. So ya'lamun means what they are doing, and ta'lamun means what you are doing. Laqad mannallahu alal mu'minin. Laqad indeed. Mannallah, uh, God's favor, or God showed favor. Indeed, God showed favor, alal mu'mineen, upon the believers. So, literally, it would mean, and indeed showed favor God upon the believers. So, what we can do idiomatically is, and indeed God showed favor upon the believers. Is ba'asa, when ba'asa, he sent, fihim, among them, and rasulan, a messenger, min anfusihim, from among themselves. He did not belong to anyone outside of them, from among themselves. Yatlu alayhim, he would recite upon them ayatihi, his revelations, wa, and in this manner yuzakkihim, he would purify them, and yu'allihumuhum, and he would teach them al-kitab, the sharia, wa, and al-hikmah. Al-hikmah, of course, refers to the philosophy and wisdom of religion. So basically what is being said here is that the Almighty, you should be very grateful to God, because He showed His favor to them. And how did He show that favor to them? He sent to them a messenger who belonged to their own selves, who was from their own nation. And what did He do? He would recite upon them God's ayat, God's revelations, وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ, and He would purify them. And how would He purify them? This is then mentioned by teaching them the book and the wisdom. By teaching them the book of course is referring to the law here, which is the Sharia, and al-hikmah is the wisdom or the philosophy of religion. Wa, and in, if, or we can say though, kanu, they were, min qabl, before this, la, in, or la is like a emphatic particle, which means it actually emphasizes fi, necessarily in, zalal, deviance, mubin, clear. So, and indeed, before this, they were in clear misguidance. They were clearly misguided. This is referring to the Arabs of the times of Prophet Muhammad. We know that these Arabs were the descendants of Prophet Ishmael. So, after Prophet Abraham, we know the whole responsibility of Shahada was passed on to the Israelites through his son Isaac, and all the way up to Jesus, it remained with them for about 2,000 years. And then, of course, it was after him that Prophet Muhammad was given the position, and this happened many centuries, like 2.5 centuries after Prophet Abraham. So, amongst the Arabs, after Prophet Ishmael, there was no prophet that had come. It was only Prophet Muhammad who came 2.5 centuries later. And in between, we know it was the Israelites who were given this responsibility. So that is what is being said here, that God showed His favor to them, to these Arabs, when He sent from among them, not from someone outside of them, from among them, a messenger who instructed them in law, who instructed them in the philosophy of religion, who purified them. And before his arrival, they were in deep error. So this is what is being told. أَوَلَمَّا أَصَابَتْكُم مُّصِيبَةٌ قَدْ أَصَبْتُم مِّثْلَيْهَا قُلْتُمْ أَنَّ هَٰذَا قُلْ هُوَ مِنْ عِندِ أَنفُسِكُمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَىٰ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. أَوَلَمَّا أَصَابَتْكُم, and yes, أَصَابَتْكُم مُّصِيبَةٌ. Asabatkum has reached you. Musibatun, a calamity. Qad, indeed, asabtum, had reached. Mislaiha, twice of its kind. So it is said that if a musibat has reached you, if a calamity has reached you, then twice that calamity had reached kad asabtum mislaiha. Then, I mean, you can say that when a calamity had reached you after you yourselves had been inflicted or had inflicted them with twice the same losses. Understand? I mean, you kad asabtum mislaiha, when you were in a position and you inflicted losses upon them which were twice. So misl is like the same, but mislai means twice. So what you have now been inflicted with, earlier on you inflicted twice that calamity upon them, of course, referring to the Battle of Badr. Kultum anna haza. And did you also say kultum anna haza? Kul huwa min indi anfusikum. So when this calamity reached you, in the Battle of Uhud, you said, where has this come from? Kultum, you said, anna haza. Where has this come from? Qul. So now the Prophet is being told, you tell them, Huwa min indi anfusikum. Huwa, this, min indi, from, anfusikum, yourselves, which means that you yourselves are to blame. It is from yourself that this calamity has struck you. Inna Allah ala kulli shayin qadir. Inna, indeed, Allah is God. Ala, on, kulli, every, shay, thing, qadir, powerful. Indeed, God has power over everything. Wa, and ma asabakum, what reached you. Ma asabakum, what reached you. Yawma, the day. Iltaqa, iltaqa means met. Al jama'an, the two armies. Wa fa, therefore. Be iznillah, with the permission of God. Wa, and liya'lam al mu'mineen, God knows the believers. So wama asabakum yawm al jama'an would mean that what befell you on the day the two armies met was with God's directive, with God's permission. And so that he is able to know the believers. Of course, the word know here means to make distinct, to make them separate, to isolate them. The thing that we already studied earlier was liyabtaliya, which means that God tries and tests people so that the situation is such that good people and bad people, they are made distinct. Because of the trial, they come to the fore, they are highlighted. So, وَلِيَعْلَمَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, so that God is able to distinguish the mu'mineen. They stand out from the hypocrites and the weak of faith. وَلِيَعْلَمَ الَّذِينَ نَافَقُوا, wa, and لِيَعْلَمَ, so that he knows, الَّذِينَ, those who nafaqu, who committed hypocrisy. So, whatever this defeat that came to you, actually, وَمَا أَصَابَكُمْ يَوْمَ الْتَقَى الْجَمْعَانِ is referring to that defeat. It has not been stated in words. The words are that what befell you, what with that which you were inflicted with. If that happened, it was so that God could make distinct the believers, and so that he could also make distinct the hypocrites. لِيَعْلَمَ الَّذِينَ نَافَقُوا وَقِيلَ لَهُمْ تَعَالَوْا قَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَأَوِدْفَعُوا. And those who had وَقِيلَ لَهُمْ would mean, and when they were said, and when it was said to them, تَعَالَوْا, come, قَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ, fight for the cause of God. قَاتِلُوا, fight, فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ, for the cause of God. Or idfa'u means to defend. So when you read it, by uniting the two words, it would be avidfa'u. But otherwise, it's aw idfa'u. So وَلِيَعْلَمَ الَّذِينَ نَافَقُوا, and وَقِيلَ لَهُمْ تَعَالَوْا قَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. And when they were told, and when they were asked that come on and fight for the cause of God, or at least defend your city, qalu, they replied, law, if, na'lamu, we knew, qitalan, that the battle is going to take place, lattaba'nakum, we would have followed you. So you see, these people who had stayed behind in the battle of Uhud, another excuse that they built up was, first they said that the Prophet must stay in the city and fight, and then they said, well, even if you go out, that battle is not going to take place. And then when they were asked, they told, well, if we were fully convinced that the battle is going to take place, we would have followed you. So that is what is being said here. It is being said that law na'lamu qitalan, had we known that the battle is going to take place, lattaba'nakum, we would have definitely followed you. We would have come behind you. Now the Quran is commenting on this attitude. It is saying, hum lil kufri yawmaizin aqrabu minhum lil iman. Hum, they, lil kufr, about disbelief, yawmaizin, that day, aqrabu, near, minhum, than they, lil iman, with regarding faith. So on that day they were closer to disbelief than faith. In other words, this is just a literal translation. What is being said here is that on that day, disbelief was something that had overcome them instead of belief. When they said this, that had war looked imminent, we would have come out of the city and fought with you. inside of them, they knew that this is just a lame excuse. They knew that the battle is going to take place. So the Quran is actually commenting on this lame excuse, that they were actually more closer to disbelief. They were scared to death. They did not want to go out, and this is what made them sit in the city. Now, يَقُولُونَ بِأَفْوَاهِهِمْ مَا لَيْسَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ. يَقُولُونَ, they say, بِأَفْوَاهِهِمْ, with their mouths, or they say from their mouths, ma, not, that, sorry, ma is that, laysa is not, fi, in, qulubihim, their hearts. They say from their mouths what is not in their hearts. Wallahu a'lamu bima yaktumun. Wa, and Allah, God, a'lamu, knows, bima yaktumun, what they are hiding. So in their hearts of hearts, they knew if they go out, they would be slain, and they did not want to express this from their mouths. So what they said is that, well, had we known that the battle is going to take place, we would have definitely come behind you, but it's not going to take place. So the Quran says they were closer to disbelief than belief on that day, and they were hiding in their hearts things that they would not like to reveal, but God knew. So yakuluna bi afwahihim ma laysa fi qulubihim, what they said from their mouths was not what they had in their hearts. But God knew very well. Wallahu a'lamu bima yaktumun. God knew what they were hiding. Yaktumun, they were hiding. Allazina qalu li ikhwanihim. Those who qalu said li ikhwanihim, to their brothers, wa qa'adu, and who sat down, who did not go out. Law ata'una, had they listened to us. Law ata'una, had they listened to us. Ma qutilu, they would not have been slain. They would not have been killed. Qul, tell them. Fadra'u. Fadra'u means to ask something to go away, to ward off something. Anfusikum, from yourselves. Al-maut, death. So once again, this is the same thing that they have repeated, that they told the people, the ones who were sitting, and they said of their brothers who had gone out, that had they listened to us, law ata'una ma qutilu, they would not have been killed. Now the Prophet is once again being told to comment them in the same vein. Fadra'u an anfusikul mauta in kuntum sadiqeen. If you are able to avert death, then do so. If you are really truthful, in kuntum sadiqeen, if you are really truthful, then try and averting death. And of course, you will not be able to do that. So with this, we come to an end to today's literal and idiomatic translation. If you have any questions now, please raise them.
Dr. Saleem, I do not see any raised hands, but I have a question. So the Jahiliyyah that you referred to earlier, is that just those particular people at the time of the Prophet, or people who misuse or do not understand or try not to understand but keep their own interests before seeing if it's a truth or a lie? Can they be also be referred to as Jahiliyyah?
I mean, that's just an extension. You can just extrapolate and include other people. But you see, this age of Jahiliyyah was something that was put to an end by the Quran. When the Quran and the believers and the Prophet himself, they showed that truth does not lie in your own vested interest. It lies in the fact that you follow your own conscience and the directives of God. It's not that something that suits you should be something that you think is the right thing. So this is a whole concept that was there. So all the tribes of Arabia who fought with others and they fought amongst themselves, it was for these vested interests, for their own personal interest. And whenever they would be asked about right and wrong, so whatever right and wrong standards that they had were not any standards that would have a common benchmark, which of course is our own conscience or the absolute truth that we know about. It would rather be their own personal vested interest. So this is how the age of Jahiliyyah was characterized. But anyone who follows this, of course, we can just by analogy say that you're following the age of Jahiliyyah, but instead of following your conscience and objective standards of truth, you are following your own personal inclinations because they suit you. So, I mean, it's like a common, you can say that the age of Jahiliyyah was rampant in all of Arabia, and the Quran and the Prophet to a major extent put an end to it. So today, anyone who follows suit can, we just cannot have the same term used for them, but what we can say is that you are following the same people or you're doing it in the same vein.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saleem. Akram Bhatti Sahab, if you can unmute your mic and ask your question.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Walaikum salam.
Sir, in 154, the two words I use for heart, sudurikum and waliyabtaliyallahu ma fi sudurikum waliyumahisa ma fi
Ma fi
qulubikum.
qulubikum.
So what's the
Yes.
fine difference between sudur and qulub? Yeah, sadr or qulub, if you can.
I mean, one thing, well, the first thing is liyabtali Allah ma fi sudurikum. It actually means that God may test what is concealed in your chests. I mean, it to put to test. It's like the first step. And the next thing is, as a result of that, yumahisa ma fi kulubikum. He is able to cleanse the evil that is found in your hearts. So that is like the second step. First is like God putting you to test, making you pass through that test, and the result of that would be that evil in that in what you conceal in your hearts is able to be sifted out, is able to be cleansed from that. So it's like stating the two steps, I would say.
So sadr and qalb are they
Are they the
interchangeable?
same? I mean, sadr and kalb are actually referring to the same fact, but the verbs are different. The first is liyabtaliya, and the second is yumahisa. So yabtaliya
Yeah.
means God tests you, makes you go through that test, and the result of that test is that whatever is concealed in your heart, it is brought to the fore. It is brought to the surface, and as a result, you are cleansed of those evil thoughts. So the second process is cleansing, and the first process is to put to test. But in both cases, the word heart or the word chest is referring to the same thing. It actually is referring to the thoughts of the hearts. What is concealed as our thoughts within ourselves.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Nishad Shafkat, please unmute your mic and ask your question. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, Doctor. Doctor, you talked about the kind-heartedness of the Prophet. If I recall correctly, is it correct that at one place even God said, "Oh Prophet, what have you done by forgiving these people and
Yes.
keeping them away
Correct.
from that day?" That's
Yes.
all. I just wanted
Yes,
to check
this is
that.
in Surah Tawbah, and this is in the Battle of Tabuk when Prophet forgave them for staying back. I think it is Hunain or Tabuk, one of the two battles. So these hypocrites, the Almighty wanted to expose them. And the Prophet, out of his politeness and gentleness, when they came to him and said that we don't have any means of transport and you would like to sit back, the Prophet, instead of insisting, he just said, okay. So on such an occasion, the Almighty said, Afallahu anka lima azinta lahum. God forgive you. I mean, God is telling the Prophet that God forgive you. What have you done? I wanted to expose these people and you have allowed them to stay back. You have spoiled my scheme, so to speak. So, I mean, yes, this is his graciousness, and this is something which we can see so rampantly in the Quran. It is being discussed, and I do, as I said, I do wish that people are able to write a biography of the Prophet on the basis of the Quran. And yes, there have been efforts made. People have authored a couple of books which are based on his biography entirely from the Quran. But I still do think that this is an effort that should continue, and more pearls of wisdom that are hidden in the Quran regarding the Prophet, they can be highlighted.
I know, sir, but that would be a little difficult because, for example, a biography would usually include his birth and his
Right.
upbringing and all that, those
Mhm.
kind of things. We could possibly highlight the aspects of his personality from the different verses of
Yes.
the Quran.
Yes, that's what I meant actually. Biography, I was not referring to his like biodata or something. That is something that's history is going to tell us. So biography means his personality, his conduct, his character, his stature, the way he conducted himself. So all these things which are really inspirational. So unfortunately, they have been lost in the maze of so many things.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you so much. Siddiqa, if you can please ask your question now.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
This is continuing from Akram Bharti Saab's question. Would
Mhm.
it be, because I'm making notes, so I was just wondering if I got this right. If we have
Mhm.
sadr and qalb and they both kind of mean the heart, we're not talking the physical anatomy heart, right? We're talking the
Of
abstract
course.
idea of heart and mind.
Right. So you see, when the Quran uses the word heart, it actually uses it to mean the center of the soul. In other words, you see, we have two planes of existence. We have a material self. We have a material existence. So the center of that material existence is your brain. It controls your material self. When the Quran uses the word heart, it actually refers to your soul, or so to speak, the center of your soul, which is like the inner cognizance that you can have of things. So it actually reflects to your, I mean, as the words are, ma fi sudurikum, whatever is in your hearts, whatever is in your chest. So it's not your hearts that are being referred to, it is the content of the hearts. Heart itself is the center of the soul, and the content of your hearts are your thoughts, basically. The way you would think about, the way you would have develop an attitude. So it's referring to those thoughts. So don't confuse it with science, because in science you have those thoughts arising in your mind and your brain. So that is not how the Quran has taken a cue from these terms. So the qalb, in the case of the Quran, is not just the heart, that piece that we have in our chest. It basically is the center of our soul, something which the soul is concentrated upon. I mean, like something of a receiver of the soul. It is like the point from which the soul receives its information.
Thank you so much.
So, Dr. Saleem, I have a question. Would that be instinct also? Would you include instinct in that?
No,
In the
instinct is a
explanation of
different
the heart
thing.
right now?
So the word instinct is in Arabic is called jibilla. I mean, jibilla means that something that is in your nature. Your instinct would mean, for example, that we have the instinct of sleeping, we have the instinct of getting hungry, we have the instinct of thirst, we have a sexual urge, which is also our instinct. So instinct are basically human needs that develop in the form of habits, I would say, also, and routines also.
Amar Rasool, please unmute your mic and ask your question.
I was wondering if the questions about these particular ayats for today are done, so I can ask a general question.
Oh, okay. Right now, I do not see any raised hands for anything pertaining to what we studied today. So, yeah, you may ask your question.
Thank you. Dr. Sahab, Assalamu alaikum. Dr. Sahab, I'm very confused about Surah Feel, and I have a lot of questions about that, and also a question about how your commentary about the historical event is different from what we have been taught since childhood. So my first question is, did the war actually happen before the Prophet's birth, or did it happen after the Prophet's birth? And does that have a significance?
We're told it happened in the year of his birth. That is why it's called the Amul Feel, the year of the elephant.
All right. Okay. So my next question, Dr. Sahab, is that God clearly states that it was through his help that this kind of a result where these people were, these aggressors were like a chewed straw, that they ended up in this state. So my second question is there a rule based on which God decides that I am going to participate or lend a hand in this particular battle, but in this other battle these people are on their own? And what law or rule is that specifically if we consider that this was not a ghazwa, this was not a battle in which the Prophet was part of this battle? So why did God decide that he's going to help out these people? And there are other questions, please. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, Ahmed, thank you for that.
Yeah, so remember, these were custodians of the Baytullah. Although they had been incriminated with polytheism, they still were people who took God's name, and of course, God was angry with them. But you see, the law of God regarding helping people is discussed in other surahs of the Quran, and that is that unless you play your role, unless you play your part in defending the house of God or anything which is, ordained for you as a responsibility, God is not going to help you. So this is like a general rule that unless you play your role, unless you play your part, he is someone who's not going to come to your help, even if it is something as distinct as his own house. So the Quraysh had to take the lead. They had to do something. And if you look at the surah, and if you also look at the historical accounts, the Quraysh knew that they would not be able to fight Abraha's army. It was a huge army if they would just face him in the open. So they took to this very novel way in which they hid in the mountains around the Kaaba, and they started to pelt stones from those high places, and the Almighty then stirred a storm, and those stones actually started to be, I mean, they picked up very large velocity. They became very speedy, and you know, when a stone strikes at a very high speed, it can really be lethal. So that is what happened. So it's not that the birds were sent for this purpose. The birds were actually sent, or they actually arrived to just consume the people, or the meat, or their own prey, as we could say. And that is how it happened. Otherwise, it does not make sense. So tarmihim bijaratin min sijil means that you threw those stones made of clay, and God actually created that storm, as a result of which those stones were, and they struck them. And remember, the word rama is used. So tarmi means to throw, and linguistically the birds cannot be ascribed this whole process, because you see, the birds they drop. They cannot, I mean, they do not use their force like this. So the word Rama, which is tarmi, can only be used for force which is like this, like thrown like horizontally like this, or maybe even vertically. But a bird, of course, you know, it cannot bend its beaks and its claws in this way. All it can do is just open the beaks or open the claws so that it can drop. So this word is also absolutely inappropriate. So Rama would not have been used had the stones been of the nature that they were being dropped by the beaks and the claws of the birds. Some other words to the effect, or to the meaning of, for example, in the Arabic language, alqa yulqi, alqa is to drop. So that was the appropriate word. Rama is something that could never have been used by the Quran, or cannot be used to imply to throw through the arms. So Rama is always something in which you use your force in a way that you draw backwards and then you throw. So this is something which the birds could not have done. So linguistically, and as far as the law of God is concerned, on both these counts, Ustaz Hamiduddin Farai says, and he's the first person who pointed this out, and he says that this is something that we have misunderstood. And if you'd like to go into more details, I will advise you to look up his tafsir of Surah Fil, if not already. So it has been summarized by Ustaz Amin Islahi and by Ustaz Ghamidi, but as I said, if you would like to research more, it is better that you go to the original person, and that is Ustaz Hamiduddin Farai. So Surah Fil you'll find in the Urdu language, also in the English being translated, and of course the original is in Arabic.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
that, Dr. Saleem. Naima Afridi, please ask your question.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum assalam.
My question is, sir, going outskirts of city and fight that war was because that was a cumulative decision of companion or shura, we can say.
That's it. I mean, the Prophet consulted his companions, and the companions who were true believers, they all said that they should take on the enemy heads on, and they should be on the offensive instead of being on the defensive and fight from within the city. The other, and mind you, it does seem from the Quran also that the Prophet himself wanted to go out. So yes, he was divinely guided in this respect also. But in order to take his believers into confidence, he also consulted them, and his own opinion, we can say, it matched the opinion of the companions who were true believers, and therefore this is how they went out and fought the battle.
So that shows for the strength of the shura, right? How
so remember one thing, that the Prophet himself was he was not bound by the shura, because the Quran has said, I mean, the rest of us, or after him, of course, the system is bound by shura, but the Prophet himself being divinely guided, that is why, you see, we just studied this verse. It says that you keep consulting them. Shawirhum fil amr fa iza azamta fatawakkal. But when you reach a decision, which is your own decision, it could be a different one from what they have given you as an advice, then you just need to trust God and go ahead with your decision. So Prophet was not bound. Yes, he did consult them, but for example, if he had a different view and others would have a different view, he was to follow his own view, because his own view would whenever it would be based on wahi. So this is also a thing that you might need to know, that the companions would often argue with the Prophet and discuss some decision with him, and they would often say that whatever you're telling us, is this because of wahi in that case we'll not argue with you. Or is it on the basis of your own opinion? In which case we will give you an opinion. So we know that Habab ibn Munzir, he gave the Prophet an advice. He actually asked the Prophet that, have you decided to go and place yourself in the army at this particular vantage point? The Prophet said yes. So Habab ibn Munzir actually wanted to know whether he was being divinely guided to go there. The Prophet said, no, it's my own strategy. So Habab said, well, if this is your own strategy, then let me give you a better idea. This is not a very clear place. It's like a very vulnerable place. Instead of settling here, we should go someplace else. And he pointed out that place. So, that is how the Prophet would also engage with his companions. Many a time he would just listen to them because he thought that they have come up with a better suggestion also. But once he was divinely guided, and this is actually what happened in the Truce of Hudaybiyah. So when he actually opened the ihram, he just took off the ihram. The people like Umar and the rest, they were they were taken aback that it's like a defeat that the Muslims have suffered. So the Prophet said that, Inni Mamur, I have been asked by God to do it. So it was at this juncture that the rest of the Sahaba also took off their ihram.
Thank you for providing more details. So it means then wherever there is no direct wahi from Allah, so that means
Right.
Prophet Muhammad SAW was always consulting,
Always consulting, and also and accepting them if he thought that they were
Right.
more logical in their view.
Right. And that's a lesson for the rest of the nations, or for
Yes,
our
right.
time, that Shura is a superiority, and whatever they decide, right or wrong, should be followed.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Saleem, then there are no more questions pertaining to the text today. Can I ask a general question in the chat?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Okay, so there's a question that somebody's asked. Is there any probation if relatives of opposite gender gather in the same place without need or necessity, but have a fruitful conversation and crack jokes which are decent, just to keep bounds healthy without any bad intentions as seen in our culture?
Absolutely. Why not?
Okay.
If people have a different view, then that should be presented. The Quran itself has said that whether the Quran says, in fact, this is a very clear message which the Quran gives. It says that these norms of gender interaction in which you are bound by decency, like for example, you wear a decent dress, you don't allow your eyes to take undue liberty, you have dressed up in a proper way. The Quran says that it does not want to limit your social interaction, and it says that you can go to each other's houses, antakulu jamiyan aw ashtata, and you can sit together and converse at one place, or you can sit separately. The Quran says it's your choice. So I think that this is something which the Quran has itself pointed out, that as long as you maintain that decency, this is something which it has allowed expressly.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Saleem. Mohammed Qasim, we're very short on time, so if you can keep your questions short, we'll take it.
Okay. सर, ये पोइट्री को हम कैजुअली पढ़े या गा के पढ़े सुनने में अजीब नहीं लगता है, बल्कि बहुत अच्छा लगता है। लेकिन अगर प्रोस को हम गा के पढ़े या फिर ये सवाल हम आपसे गा के करें तो सुनने में बहुत अजीब लगेगा। मेरा जो डाउट है वो दरअसल किल्लत इल्म की वजह से है कि मुझे अरबी नहीं आती है। कुरान जो कि अल्लाह का कलाम है, क्या इसको गा के पढ़ने से, जैसे अल्हम्दुलिल्लाहि रब्बिल आलमीन को अल्हम्दुलिल्लाहि रब्बिल आलमीन, कुरान को इस तरह से गा के पढ़ने से सुनने में अजीब नहीं लगता है क्या? कल सर आपने बताया था कि कुरान प्रोज नहीं है बल्कि राइम्ड प्रोज है, तो हमको इससे ख्याल है कि शायद इसलिए गा के पढ़ने से अजीब नहीं लगता है, जैसे कि पोइट्री को गा के पढ़ने से अजीब नहीं लगता है। बट सर, आई स्टिल नीड क्लैरिफिकेशन कि एक अरबी जानने वाले के लिए ये चीज कैसी है। एंड सर, लास्ट पॉइंट, कि चूंकि हमको सिर्फ उर्दू और इंग्लिश आती है, तो क्या आप हमको कोई उर्दू या इंग्लिश में कुरान के जैसा राइम्ड प्रोज का कोई एग्जाम्पल दे सकते हैं जिससे हम फील कर सके कि ये कुरान किस तरह का कलाम है? थैंक यू सर।
तो पहली बात तो ये है कि देखिए, ये जो गा के आप कह रहे हैं ना, ये कुरान मजीद को तो नबी सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम भी ऐसे ही पढ़ते थे। इसके लिए वर्ड गाना नहीं है, बल्कि इसका मतलब है कि कुरैश के लहजे में तिलावत करना। तो जब हम ऐसे पढ़ते हैं तो इसको हम तिलावत कहते हैं। इसका तिलावत का मतलब ये है कि कुरान मजीद के जो मखारिज हैं, उसकी जो प्रोनाउंसिएशन है, उसको हम अरब लहजे में पढ़ रहे हैं। तो ये नबी सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम भी पढ़ते थे, सहाबा भी पढ़ते थे, और हम सब की कोशिश होती है कि हम उस लहजे में पढ़ें। इस वजह से ये तो बिल्कुल कोई इसमें कबाहत नहीं है। और इसके लिए गाने के बजाय, जैसे मैंने कहा, जो वर्ड यूज़ खुद कुरान अपने बारे में करता है वो तिलावत है। और आपका जो दूसरा सवाल था,
राइम्ड प्रोज का कोई ऐसा
जी, तो
एग्जांपल?
देखें राइम प्रोज की एग्जांपल आपको अरबी अदब में मिल जाएगी। जैसे मकामात एक सिन्फ है, मकामात हमदानी अगर आपने देखने हो, मकामात हरीरी हैं, अरबी जबान में ही हैं,
सर
और मुकफ़ा और
अरबी में
मुसज्जा हैं।
जानते, उर्दू या इंग्लिश में ऐसा कोई एग्जांपल मिल सकता है क्या?
नहीं, उर्दू अंग्रेजी में हाँ, आप ये कह सकते हैं कि मोहम्मद हुसैन आज़ाद, अगर आपने नाम सुना हो, उन्होंने आब हयात जो किताब लिखी, या कदीम उर्दू है ये, आज से समझ लीजिए 150-200 साल पहले, तो उस वक्त भी तरीका था मुकफ़ा और मुसज्जा उर्दू लिखने का। मुकफ़ा और मुसज्जा का मतलब है ऐसी नसर जिसमें काफिया और रदीफ होता था। तो वो आप देख सकते हैं कदीम ज़माने में लखनऊ की जो उर्दू है, या मोहम्मद हुसैन आज़ाद की जो उर्दू है, इसी तरह से बहुत सारे राइटर्स उनके ज़माने में, तो ये कुछ अरसे के लिए चल पड़ा था, लेकिन उसके बाद इसको अबैंडन कर दिया गया। और अल्ताफ़ हुसैन हाली और उनके बाद जो लोग आए, सर सैयद भी उनमें नुमायाँ थे कि उन्होंने नसर को बहुत सादा कर दिया। तो सर सैयद से जो स्कूल ऑफ थॉट शुरू हुआ उर्दू ज़बान का, वो था कि जिसके अंदर नसर के अंदर वो जो राइम्ड हिस्सा है वो निकाल दिया गया और सादा तरीके से नसर लिखती गई। तो ये आप उर्दू ज़बान की तारीख जब पढ़ेंगे तो आपको ये मिल जाएगा। अंग्रेज़ी ज़बान में भी इसी तरह से आपको मिलेगा कि जैसे जेफरी चौसर वगैरह थे, या जो कदीम बिल्कुल पुराने लिटरेरी लोग थे, उनके यहाँ भी आपको राइम प्रोज मिल जाएगी, लेकिन वो इतनी कदीम अंग्रेज़ी है कि वो आज आपको यू विल नॉट बी एबल टू मेक सेंस ऑफ इट, वो बहुत मुख्तलिफ है। ज़्यादा बेहतर यही है कि अगर आपने कुरान मजीद की को समझना है तो आप कुरान ही को समझिए, उसके लिए आपको किसी के पास जाने की ज़रूरत नहीं है। अपना उन्स पैदा कीजिए कुरान मजीद से, कुरान मजीद को समझ के पढ़ने की कोशिश कीजिए, और अगर आप बार बार पढ़ेंगे तो यही वो चीज़ है जो आपके लिए मुफीद साबित होगी।
सर गांधी साहब ने मिज़ान में लिखा है कि
मैं यहाँ पे आपको
कि
एक सेकंड, यहाँ आपने क्वेश्चंस कर लिए, just a second. Dr. Saleem, I have a few more raised hands, but we're almost out of time. Do you think we can take those, or should I hold
I
on to
think
them?
if you have a couple of questions, maybe we can take a couple of questions.
Okay. Amar Rasool, please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir, very quickly, मेरा follow up question ये है सूरह फील के बारे में, या वाक़या फील के बारे में, कि डॉक्टर साहब जो अबाबील हैं वो तो बेसिकली इंसेक्ट ईटिंग बर्ड्स हैं, वो ह्यूमन फ्लैश तो नहीं खाते, या डेड ह्यूमन फ्लैश तो नहीं खाते। तो मेरा सवाल ये है कि वो उनका गोश्त, इतने बड़े लश्कर जो है वो खाया हुआ भूस कैसे हो गए, जस्ट बाय पेबल्स जो कि कुफारे मक्का फेंक रहे थे। और दूसरा मेरा फॉलो अप सवाल ये है सर कि व्हाई डज सच अ बिलीफ एग्जिस्ट जो कि इरोनस है इन योर point of view, like
So
it's a
first of
widespread
all,
belief exist karta hai.
first of all, the thing that you have to understand is the word ababil is not referring to the ababil that we know of. The word
Okay.
ababil means a group of birds. So tayran, the word is tayran ababil. Tayr means birds and ababil means a group. So the word ababil, when it is translated as birds, is basically an Urdu translation. The word in Urdu, ababil, refers to a type of bird, but in Arabic, the word ababil means a group of birds. So basically,
All right.
tayr and ababil, the word tayr is used for that. And I mean, they just came to consume the meat of the animals. They did not come and to throw throw anything. The Quraysh actually were the ones who were throwing those stones, and the animals had just arrived. These meat-eating birds, these were vultures or eagles, they had just arrived to consume the people who had been killed and slain, and they were just there to eat their meat. So they were not, I mean, throwing anything from their beaks, as is generally misunderstood. And the reason for this misunderstanding, of course, is the fact that linguistically and historically, it does happen that at times when something becomes famous, then people don't, I mean, really review it, and they just continue to harp on the same tone, and they continue to give it the same direction. So ever since the earlier tafasir, for example, in Tabari, in Razi, you will find this interpretation, and it became so famous that no one thought of anything else. And no one thought that the words of the tafsir or the words of the verse they are not true to its translation. As I just said, the word tarmi cannot be used for birds at all. It has to be used for the Quraysh. So the birds were not throwing anything. It was the Quraysh who were throwing, because Rama always means to throw something like this. There is no other, I mean, you can consult an Urdu English dictionary, an Arabic English dictionary, and you'll see the word Rama is not used for something to be dropped from a height. You'll never use the word Rama for that. So I think it was linguistically something that was untenable, And then, as I said, that the law of God is something which is discussed in so many places in the Quran that unless you do your needful, God is not going to help you. Remember what the Israelites were told when they wanted to enter Palestine, and they stayed back and they said to Moses, "Fazhab anta wa rabbuka faqatila inna hahuna qaidun," that you and your God go and fight. We are going to just sit here because we think that these people are very strong for us. So the Almighty actually reprimanded them that this is not the way. If you don't do your due, I'm not going to do my part.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you
sir.
so much for that, Dr. Saleem. Sania, if you have a quick question, you can ask it now.
I want to ask you, referring to the hadith where Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam advised his son to change his doormat. So, did the Prophet alayhi salam label the women as doormat? What is your interpretation?
Well, I think we have discussed this narrative a number of times, and I've also written on it. This is not a very authentic narrative, and it is from the Israelites, as they called amongst the Israelites. This is something that has infiltrated into our hadith books, and neither the Prophet Abraham, in his rightful mind, ever did that, nor is it right to attribute it to him. This is not an authentic narrative at all. Just a small conclusion that I might state before you, that when something comes into hadith literature, it's not that it's always regarded to be true. So yes, it is found in our books, but it's not correct.
Okay, thank you so much, Jazakallah.
Naushad Shafqat Saab, just a quick question, then I have to wrap up the session, please, to make it quick.
Not a question, just something to for a friend of mine who asked a question. Sir, A.J. Arbery has translated the Quran in verse. He's an English author, and he has translated in verse. And he says it's beautiful Arabic poetry-like for him, and therefore his translation is available by the simple name of the Quran, by A.J. Arbery.
Yes. So Arthur Jeffrey Arbery, he lived about 50 years ago. He was a friend of Allama Iqbal, also not exactly a friend. He translated part of Iqbal as well.
That's right. That's right.
So yes, that is something that you can also study. So he did try to do justice to the Quran by translating it in the form of rhyme prose, and that is one thing that you might also study.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saleem. It was a wonderful session. Thank you for your wisdom, and for everyone who came in today to listen to it. We will be meeting everybody next Sunday, inshallah. Thank you, Dr. Saleem.